Welcome to the Experts Speak English podcast. Together, we'll discover how to talk yourself into an international career without the bullshit. Every business conversation that you have takes you closer to or further away from your goal. So this show is about getting both informal and formal conversations right, whether that's a confidential personal chat with a key player on your team or on the stage in front of hundreds of industry experts. What you say and how you say it counts. And if leadership is your goal, then being able to influence people will accelerate the process. At the end of each episode, I give you an opportunity to try out what you have just learned on the show. Perhaps you'll be brave enough to rise to Coco's communication challenge. You'll get to try out one of the tools, techniques, or tips at work, because listening about leadership and leading are not the same thing, honey. I'm Corinne Wilhelm. I'm a corporate communication coach with almost 25 years of experience of helping leaders to secure the career that someone with their knowledge and experience deserves through intentional communication, intercultural awareness, and the confidence to really show up as the English-speaking expert. So let's get cracking, shall we? Fantastic to have you here on such a hot day. We've met at 7:30 in the morning so that we can get the interview in before the heat sets down upon the capital. So this is episode 187, Göran, and we're going to be talking about the talent exodus and what corporates can do about it. So Göran and I have been chatting a while now, and he was one of those people, the first time I met him, I thought, I've got to get you on the show. So yes, we're living in an era where lots of people in my age, and let's say slightly older than me, are going into retirement. And a lot of women aren't coming back to the workplace to go back into technology and engineering because there's something in the workplace that isn't too inspiring. They're not getting paid as much, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We can maybe go into that bit later. But basically, we need to do more to capture the knowledge of these people before they move on, don't we, Göran?
I think we should.
And I think the companies know that they should, but it's something that they never really kind of get round to. It's like, yeah, we know he's going to retirement in 5 years. Well, we've got time. 5 years seems a long way off. And then suddenly it's like, oh, well, I've only got 3 weeks left and everyone's panicking. So let's talk a little bit about knowledge management in terms of how it works and how we could optimize it, Göran.
My pleasure, definitely. Where to start? It's probably like smart to consider first, what do we understand what knowledge is, especially like the organizational context, right? I think it's like, there's like something like common sense. Let's start very basic, right? And I'm working with like hundreds of people each year as a trainer, facilitator, and consultant. And it's so different, like what I'm confronted with in terms of common sense, in terms of professional knowledge, in terms of inherited knowledge that comes like from elders in the company. Even I would consider we miss a little bit like this eldership, which is merely reflected in the issues people have with hiring elderly people, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a big mistake, because they carry a lot of knowledge, and not just like the set of knowledge. I think it's also the structure of knowledge and how they acquired it, because this is so rapidly changing due to digitalization, social media, AI. So we have to consider the different mechanics and procedures we have to get knowledge into our heads, because we are.
So do you think that they have like a deeper knowledge?
I'm not sure if they have deeper knowledge, but probably they have acquired it in a way so it just sunk in deeper. So they can maybe with longer work careers, with work paths that maybe continued longer. I think they have at the end they have probably like a deeper and connected knowledge, but probably also like sometimes in very stuck and stable structures. Like neuroscience says, like what fires that wires. So, and I think then some Gen Z person often is confronted with the stubbornness of a boomer, or with kind of inflexibility, and with a different set of vocabulary, not to forget.
That's right. And I think, there are some people who are 65 and they're still, I mean, I'm not 65, but, I'm certainly not like other women my age. I've got a lot more energy. I'm a lot more connected. I'm a lot more open-minded. But, some people age faster. And I think it's easy to age faster if you're in an environment that isn't dynamic.
100%. I mean, it's like couples therapy says, like what like keeps up with a good relationship is like the longing for novelty. So
Mm-hmm.
now we have probably opposing dynamics of, oh, I don't need to learn this anymore. I'm just like working the next 3 to 5 years, speaking
Mm-hmm.
about boomers.
Yeah.
And what I observe is also like a certain kind of fatigue to adapt to this novelty, to the new thing, to the habits. And it's not just like on the plane of mere knowledge, is I think a very habitual thing. Like the values change so much. The way
Yeah.
how people require care from the employer
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand, and then we have this insanely blowing up knowledge of AI, or technologies of AI. Even a
Yeah.
normal or average person, I don't want to say like boomers are not normal, but maybe like an average age like person in the workforce is able to cope with.
Yeah. I think as well, there is certainly an element of, people see knowledge as their USP, like they think, well, if I tell everybody what I know, then, what I'm not going to get my bonus, or I'm not going to get that promotion, or I'm not going to get whatever. I mean, they're not really going for promotion anymore, maybe, but, they want to be valued and cherished. But I think you can show appreciation in so many different ways. But I think a lot of people a lot of boomers are kind of clutching on to their information, A, because they can't be bothered to hand it on, or B, they don't want to tackle the technology around handing it on, or they don't want to lose their super status, as the expert.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's all three of them, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And maybe there's a blend,
I mean, it's understandable. So like we have a lack of like skilled employees, or like applicants, and then we have on the other side people that acquire this knowledge with very complicated or like long-lasting work paths, and they see it somehow. What I can observe or retrieve from people that I interview, um, they feel like mistreated in a way if someone can step in their profession with a 3 month course where they like work their ass off for 5 years, and they feel
And that's understandable, right? You can see where that would come from, that emotional connect. I could get that.
exactly. So, and I think the company's jobs, the organization's jobs, is to think much deeper about knowledge management and knowledge acquiring, and what knowledge is and how is this distributed. I see all these ambitions to put it into tools and databases, but the thing that I put a lot of focus in is kind of the, let's say, like narrative cohesion, something that is like, given from one person to the other, or like shared in a circle, or
Mm,
observation, or you have a superior that is not just like a superior by role, but that is an inspiring leader and that teaches
mm-hmm,
you a lot. But I even personally have to tell you, I mean, I was rarely employed in my life, just 3 years in different
mm-hmm,
positions. But rarely I had a person that really taught me a lot, because everybody's
mm,
already so busy. And I think if people would have
yeah.
more clear sit-ins, I'm not talking about meetings. I'm really talking
No,
about
no.
like circle work, where
Mm-hmm,
by the application of storytelling, of proper sharing, of contextualization, of connecting stories, knowledge is emerging, is generated by people themselves. And I think these forums, they are quite missing.
I think in the agile world, I mean, there are 5 ceremonies that should accommodate the transfer of knowledge, and they should be lending to a constant evolution of processes and stuff like this. But unfortunately, in the companies that I've worked with, I think I've maybe worked with maybe 12 different companies that are doing different versions of agile. I see agile as a spectrum these days. um, and then very often, even if they're having 3 out of 5, I mean, the space, I'm talking about the headspace, the time to really reflect upon how did I perform is difficult, maybe even more so in a German speaking environment, because I think people feel uncomfortable owning up to the fact that they made a mistake, even though, if the culture was different, they would do it. But if the culture isn't right, it's just not going to work,
100%.
There has to be that safe space, doesn't there, to really open up. And you can't do that by offering them a glass of water and an apple,
No, it's certainly not. So I think like you refer a little bit like to like what we call psychological safety. And I
Of
think
course, yeah.
the misunderstanding with psychological safety in my observation is pretty much that people think it's the absence of conflict. But it's more for me
Oh, yeah.
the ability to contain conflict and to create with it and to turn it into us against the conflict and not me and you in a conflict.
Mm.
It's maybe us in a conflict with another matter, with an issue, with a challenge, with a big change on the market or with the competitor.
Yeah.
So, and the culture is really a point to put so much more focus in. We talk about like this like soft discipline, soft versions as much, but this is like kind of the grit or the emerging like web of like valuable connections. I don't know if you know this the real org chart.
No, I don't. I'll have to get
Is
familiar with that.
like later like maybe you can even like blend it in for the listeners. It's just
Mm.
is the formal org chart, like with the totally top down. So the top person is still smiling. The middle management is the mouth is like this, and everybody working underneath them is just like having like the negative smiley. So and then with a colored pen, somebody put in what really happens there. Has a secret crush with, brings kids to school, is in the bowling club with, sells drugs too, has an affair with, so that you see like what is behind the curtain, behind that like
Oh, very smart. I like that.
stable group.
And we are individuals, we are human beings at the end of the day, but very often we feel like we have to function, at work, or we feel like we have to put on a brave face, as we say in the UK, or, stiff upper lip, as we would say in Britain. So, I mean, I don't think that's helpful. But I think you're right. The different levels of the hierarchy, I think, there are people at the top who are pretty stressed and they might not be smiling so much, but I get your point. It's a good thing. I'll definitely share that.
Yeah. And I always tell like there's this cross door in the morning that people go through, and as soon as they like cross that door in the company, they put off the private person coat, so then put on like the workers like the kind of an imaginary color.
Mm.
Right, and then they become this person because they are often not everywhere, of course not, in an environment that requires them to just show that little like chunk of personality that is adapted to the professional, to the contract that they were signing.
Yeah. I'm working with a phenomenal leader at the moment, and she's fairly new in her role, and she's a very feminine woman, but not a weak feminine woman. I mean, she's strong, she's feisty, and she's very attractive. She's got a good figure and everything, and it's very important to her that she's not just seen as the pretty one, that she doesn't want to be labeled with this, oh, you how did you get to that position kind of thing, because she's not like that at all. And she has to put a lot of thought into how authentic can I be. I mean, she wants to be totally authentic, that's her style, but she's not in an organization that she's in a very male dominated organization. So if you're too authentic, people take advantage of that, don't they? So it's kind of difficult, isn't it? Knowing, where is the line, or how do I navigate this?
Of course, and especially you talk about women right now, like, and it's like more like traditionally patriarchic environments, like this, in English, you have the word to man up or to male up.
Yeah, to man up.
Which is like, to somehow cope with the environment that is shaped and formed by kind of like male attributes or requirements.
Yeah.
So this is one thing. And I think it's good to have, of course, a professional stance. And there's like jobs, of course, there is something required to be more formal than informal. But for the average team, and working internationally, just like taught me a lot about that. I think like the bonding that like contributes to this narrative cohesion I was speaking. Every leader is an obligation to do strong bonding work. Everybody's talking so much about DEI, but
Yeah.
I think like the part with the B at the end that is so often missing, the bond, the belonging, comes through practices of bonding, through a thing that we facilitators apply when we follow our principle of connection before content.
It's the most important thing, isn't it, to establish that connection right at the beginning of the facilitation so that you can get more out of it later. But I think that you're right. There's this big, focus on AI at the moment. But I think people are craving that personal connection, whether it's a little, I have a Voice Vantage program, and I send out little, cards and things in the post, and people really love that. It's just a little postcard. It's nothing too incredible, but people really love them. And I think it's the same with office parties now. Like there's only 2 a year normally, summer and end of the year, or Christmas, depending on which culture you are. But now people are starting to scrimp and save about those parties. Like, wouldn't it make more sense to say, we only see each other 2 years, we're going to have the most amazing party and we're going to do phenomenal things and establish a real, sense of community and commitment and have team games and stuff. But no, now it seems to be, well, with the companies I'm working with, it seems to be that they are like, okay, everyone's used to remote work now, we don't have to bother,
And this is, I think that's a big issue. So because the hybrid teams I'm working with, or the mere online teams, they really suffer this kind of bonding practice. And I think that you can just succeed as an online and a hybrid team if you have at least 2, better 4 offsites a year. Yeah, to have this bonding form. This is something that like can be like hardly transmitted through like your internet cables. So, and I even like last week I had a training, and the leader I spoke with said, so there's even people I work with, I don't know how they look like because the camera is still off, which is for me a non-negotiable when I'm in the setting. Imagine like we would talk here, and it's not just like the beauty you shine with in the morning, like to entertain people. It's just also like they see your micro emotions, they see gestures and stuff.
Of course, you need to pick up if somebody is distracted or down, or you if you're not interested in people, then hey, leave your camera off. But I'm genuinely interested in other people.
And this is a thing, like I think like the old school leadership somehow thinks like top down is doing the work, whereas like I think the smart modern leader is, and even like elderly leaders that were like coping well with their employees, were aware of this like relational skills that are so key. Coming in each morning with a bag of croissants, shaking the hand, having eye contact to everyone, have each voice. I require that when I do online trainings. Before we start, everyone has said a word, so they're activated. Because there's a meeting with 20 people, but just 5 people were talking, so 15 they fade out. But if they're activated, they contributed already something to it, to the space. We have heard them, so the others are activated as well, that you are there. It's very simple, but it's so often forgotten.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's often the simple things that are forgotten, isn't it? But I think you're right. It's very easy to be passive online. You could be doing anything, so you really have to pull them in with interactivity, getting people involved and making sure that everyone has their say. I think especially the introverts could very easily kind of, take a step back on an online call or training or
I want to add something that because you mentioned ritual. And especially when you look at rituals that are somehow commoditized, especially in the in a framework like agile, often you see they become hollow, they become empty.
Yeah.
They're just like
Yeah, really. I love that. Hollow and empty. You're absolutely right.
a shallow practice, and 4 or 5 people of a team stand there in the morning and have to report what went well, what they want to do. So it's just like, if you don't play with it and if you do not connect before, it's one of the most awkward situations where you stand there maybe 7:30 or 8:30 in the morning. Your personality is still a bit weak because you're not like in full energy charge, and then it's like, yeah, I've done this and that. It's a bit like getting naked verbally,
Yeah.
and it's inconvenient, and sometimes it's totally useless, and you see like how people then pass out in a way, and this can happen
Yeah.
even in an offline ritual. So for me, that is also part of like what I call embodied leadership. It also belongs that you grow as a leader the capability to read body language, to read the
Mm.
biology of people, to be aware how setting breaks, what food maybe I provide in the cantina, how the circulation of air is, etc., etc. I mean, there is an awareness, but still the load of work is so high. So, and I think that leads back to the issue that the assembly of contradictions that is accumulated in organizations is too rarely pointed to.
Mm.
You have
I
this
think,
take care for your work-life balance, but always go the extra mile. Doesn't make much sense.
yeah.
You know?
Or always take care of work-life balance, and then they show up at 7 and they don't go until 7:30.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Half day, right? It's balance.
yeah. No, I think you're right. And I remember once I was working with an interim manager, and, this is a very challenging situation. If you go in as an interim manager, kind of everybody pretty much hates you at the beginning, because they're all like on red alert anyway, especially after a merger or something. So, sometimes you have to really manage that situation delicately. And it occurred to me as I was working with this guy that actually, if you're an interim manager and you're looking at the culture of a company, it's actually pretty similar to if you're looking at the culture of a new country, different country, because you have to really observe. Like, you could ask for information, but you're not going to get that information until you've got that connection, until you've got their trust. So you can't wait that long as an interim manager. You've got to hit the ground running. And it's the same if you go to a different country. You can't just wait for 3 or 4 months until you've worked out the culture before you start talking to people. So I think observation is such a key skill that, that's something definitely that I work on a lot with my clients, my coaching clients. Yes, I'm a communication coach, but half of communication is actually observing, not just with your eyes, but your ears and the vibe. I think women tend to be a little bit better at the vibe than men, but you can learn it. It's he's giving me a snarl there. But these things are really important.
Should I comment on this?
Yeah, go. I want to hear
Uh,
your reaction, because you're a sensitive kind of guy. Maybe you see it differently.
yeah, I'm investigating in that. So, but I got a reflection of a very like valued colleague, and he said like, "Oh, probably like check yourself for high sensitivity," and I know somehow I have that skills.
Hmm.
And it's sometimes a burden, but of course for my job it's very contributional. So when I
Of
have
course.
the participants in the workshop, they say like, hey, even I'm doing tandems a lot with another coach, yeah, in the leadership training.
Oh, nice. I like those.
Yeah, it's perfect. So that gives me then time, like when he's interacting with the group, to observe. But I do it very naturally because it's for me, it's collecting data. Every little move, every density of certain expressions, words, narratives, they all get noted down in my head, and then I can refer to later on. And
Perfect.
my systems thinking coach, my supervisor, he said, good decisions do not come from thinking; they come from observation.
Mm.
So approved. And the participants, they reach out to me and said like, hey, even when you're like not doing anything, you observe all the time. I've seen it. It's like, you see, it's my job, because then
I
they're
see
wondering,
everything.
yeah, they really wonder, how do you know that your body told me? You mentioned
Mm.
that sentence as a reference 2 hours before, and of course it's you had like these words, and these words popped up regularly, like when other people are speaking. So it's maybe a topic, or you have a team that overuses diminutives and sweet words and conjunctives. So there's an underlying weakness, or like an absence of strength, or maybe kind of an overruling fear.
Yeah, or these minimizer words, I'm just a
Exactly.
junior, or I'm only here to observe, or these kind of minimizer words,
Exactly.
they're tricky.
So on this you discount yourself, and the question is, why do you do that? And there's kind of this kind of careful overcare language, even among like coaches and facilitators. I would like to invite you maybe this for the next step. My God, you're a leader. The next step is, okay, this is the path we're gonna go. Of course, we adapt to culture, and I got my lessons as a German, working in Switzerland and Africa in EMEA. So, but the observation skill, I want to outline one more time again. I don't know if you know this English neuroscientist Bolotto.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean he's so great. Like, and in his book Deviate, like he has this one sentence that just jumped into my face, and he said like the next big invention is nothing techy. It's a new way of seeing.
Mm.
So, and that was really like that said properly. And I was like, this is what I observed. But observation and this time, like foreseeing, implies you need time.
Yeah, you need space, like headspace to do that.
Space, definitely, leeway.
And that's why it works so well when you're doing the tandem thing, because there's the other trainer is doing, their thing and looking after the group and making sure that, they're all contributing and picked up and stuff. And you can be looking at the participants. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's lovely. And like we should have the time. And even like when we have there an interaction, I often like, I pick one aspect, one thing, one movement, one overuse of a tool, or yeah, certain narratives again. So and then I'm asking the group, so what was apparent, what was like very like what was like standing out in that performance, in that presentation, in this pitch? And I often miss it. So, and I think it leads back up to just a hypothesis. So they're not invited in an environment to be that attentive.
And that comes back to the ritual thing, right? So if you're going into a workshop and you're not really expected to actively take part, then you will come in with this kind of hangover from the last training, and then if they suddenly get a couple of facilitators that go, no, 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 you do this and you do that, and then they're like, oh, wake up call.
Yeah, it's probably the last workshop bias, right?
Yeah.
Because I have that so often. It's like, you were kind of a different trainer. So, what makes me different? And then I see it's just sometimes the thing of not forgetting humor is an excellent instrument to practice leadership. It's very inviting. It's definitely like a testing tool. As it said, the character of the person you can recognize in the joke the person can't laugh about anymore.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, humor is so valuable. And I think that is also another reason why it's quite good to have somebody from outside. Sure, you can take somebody who has lots of knowledge from inside the company, but, experts in area A are not necessarily going to be able to transport that knowledge in a really effective way. So I think I love making using the experts in an organization to make sure that we're on track and we're targeting the right pain points and things. But I think there's definitely space for people outside with a kind of more neutrality, more experience. I mean, we've both worked all over the world with different companies. You learn a lot from that. You learn a good little technique from there, and that didn't work so well, and look what happened there. You can pick up from so many other companies. But if you're only working for one company, I have some people, they've worked for a company for maybe 20, 25 years, so they've not experienced anything else. So then it's difficult to come up with a bright idea unless you happen to have a placement student who is brave enough to speak up, or has the right opportunity to do that.